acrylic because it ruined the aesthetics. So CBS, or one of the networks, opens up, and he's getting ready to do the big farewell speech. And I see a hand go up, and I realize it's Sandy McClure's hand. It goes up and it goes down. McGreevy takes it and hands it back to her. Sandy puts it right back. If you ever get to see that clip, that's Sandy McClure. And that was typical Sandy. Don't take any crap on it. But to answer your question, he and I actually got along. I think he was a good-hearted human being, and he made some dumb decisions. But I don't think he was, a crook or anything like that. And one day I got this phone call. It was one of those nights where we were working, doing something late. And the voice on the other said, "Hi, Bob, it's Go On." I'm thinking, Go On. Couldn't be that Go On. He lives in Israel. And I said, "Yes." And he says, "I was wondering, you want to come up to New York and we can have a dinner together or something?" And I said, "I'm working." Which was true, I wasn't working. I said, "How about tomorrow?" He said, "I'm going back to Israel tomorrow." I said, "How about you come to the airport and we'll talk at the airport?" I said, "Okay." So I get the train up to New York. We talk. I'm not really sure what the meeting was about. We were writing the book at the time, but he didn't know. As far as I know, he still doesn't. Although he's got a big role in it. And I said to him after we were talking about it, I said, the funny thing about this is, as much as I've written about you, I've never met you until today. He said, no. I said, I've stood next to you many times. He said, you just didn't know it was me. Which in the end was kind of scary. Because there was a lot of feeling that really he might not be the innocent young former sailor. That he pretended to be, that he might actually be part of the Israeli trouble with their CIA. I don't know if he was or not, but that was sort of the chilling thing about the whole thing. But I did like McGrady. I ran into him recently. He stayed away from the State House. He first came back for the governor's State of the State this year. And the thing on him now, he's now working with women in prison and kind of counseling do the thing while he tries to finish his Episcopal didn't want him after he finished college. But, and so I'm standing down in the hall, and McGreevy comes up, and he hugs me. And we chat about it, and then he says, well, I've got to get back to jail in Hudson County. And I said, well, that's where we always thought you'd wind up, Governor. He said, good one. Well, we did go along. I got along well with all of them except John Corzine. John Corzine's a weird duck. Oh, we're taking this. I mean that in a nice way.
I'll put that on YouTube later.
There's a great scene in the movie, if you ever get a chance to see the movie. Movie people came down and they were scraping off John Corzine so they could write Kurt Christie on the wall, and they wanted to capture that for the film. Well, I was standing down there with him. The governor, Corzine, he's literally got maybe an hour left in office. Goes over to his counsel's office to shake hands and say goodbye to them, and he sees that I'm standing there on the other side of the hall. He comes out and he does this great big circle thing. The boy having to walk close to, which you can't. You would not know that if I hadn't just told you. If you ever get a chance to see Sopranos the movie, when he does that big thing, he's trying to avoid me. You're right.
Do you think people who leave New Jersey carry the corrupt system with them?
That's interesting because you should bring that up because that scares the hell out of people down south. There's a story in the book about how many Jersey people are moving down south, and Southerners are interesting people. I can say this because I grew up in Georgia. We try to be nice and friendly to everybody, but unless you're from there, you'll never be from there. You know? And that really bothers people from up here who go down there. But the other thing is, they don't want you breaking New Jersey ways in terms of government. And I don't want them doing it either. You know, I have a house in North Carolina. But as far as government goes, I don't know. There's awful lot of people living down there who escaped this very thing. There was one former senator who went to Florida. By the way, what percentage of state employee retirement checks do you suppose go out of state?
Probably like 7.
Yeah, last time we checked it was 26. But that's what happens. They screw up this state, particularly, I'm not talking about just regular working people who deserve what they get. I'm talking about the courts.
Pension outside of state is so much cheaper.
Exactly. And so there was one of these state senator types who ran on to Florida and tried to run for city council down in Tampa or one of those places down in Florida. Defeated. Big time. He's the only one I know who ever went and actually tried to get there. They do not want any part of this kind of government. New Jersey's notorious across the country for this. And I guess I have to take a little of the credit for that. But, it is true. I didn't make any of it up.
I just wanted to ask one more question.
Sure, right.
You said you lived in Georgia and LA and North Carolina and all that. So
Alabama, Seattle,
So how long have you actually lived in New Jersey that you wrote a book about New Jersey?
20 years.
It seemed odd to me, like you would figure
Well,
somebody from
see,
New Jersey would hammer New Jersey.
Sandy is not from, that's part of the problem. People who live in New Jersey hardly ever go anywhere. And they think the rest of the country is just like this. Sandy's not from New Jersey either. I've lived in more states than she has because I was with the Associated Press.
Right.
I lived all over the world. And I've never seen anything as bad as this. One of the questions we get when we're talking to groups out of New Jersey is, why do the voters put up with this? It's a question I've never been able to answer. I don't know.
Not choice, but a balance.
I think you could. I think you could blow them all out in the next election if you really wanted to. It's all fixed for incumbents. It fixes all in for friends and all that kind of. It's sort of the worst of cheap politics, really. The Chicago is not this bad. Usually the most corrupt states are Louisiana, Illinois, Rhode Island, New Jersey. I can't answer that question, but I've never seen anything this bad, really. And Southern politics is no piece of cake either. But it doesn't tend to be as really corrupt, crooked. That's what we have here. It's sort of corrupt in a different kind of way.
Right.
We talked about a man named Thomas A. Mathis. As a matter of fact, there's a bridge named after him going over to the barrier island from the seaside. He was probably the original Ocean County Republican machine boss.
Yeah.
He was Secretary of State. He ran everything. The editor of the New Jersey Courier tagged him and a bunch of his friends on a gambling boat back in the 30s to the point where they actually brought the guy up on charges of criminal libel or something like that. And the guy actually wound up dying of a heart attack before he could finish up the case. But it goes deep and long.
Yeah, and like I said, it goes back 200-300 years. One of the things that I didn't know actually until we were researching the book is that how much of the mob types vacationed in Jersey. There was, and I can't get this out of my mind, I think it's so funny. There was a convention of mob types in Atlantic City back around the turn of the 20th century. And Al Capone was there.
I don't say that. You could look persuading the teacher to believe Al Capone was in New Jersey.
He was in New Jersey. And he came for this convention, and Meyer Lansky, all the people. And it was a convention, and they had all agreed to sort of get along with each other during the convention. And I couldn't get this image out of my head, but we put it in the book. Can you just, people go to the conventions. Can you imagine him walking around with that big cigar and a little sign that says, "Hi, I'm Al"? I mean, I can't get that image out of my mind. Okay, anybody else? Go on, we're going to get everybody. Yes, go ahead.
Why do you think that New Jersey is so much more corrupt than other cities?
I wish I could answer that. I don't know. I think we've got a lot of practice. We've been doing it a long time, and we have laws here. See, one of the, and I get into people who are always trying to defend the state and put us down for saying it's one of them is corrupt. You're college students, so you know better. There's a difference between illegal and corrupt. It's not the same thing. There are many things that are corrupt that are not illegal. For instance, in this state, there are people in the legislature who are also a mayor, who also are some school superintendent somewhere, or more likely an assistant, so they really don't have a job. That's not illegal. Certainly is a conflict of interest. And if you were in somewhere like Nebraska or North Dakota, you'd go to prison for that, having more than one retirement paycheck. Not illegal. So they have sort of fixed the system to take care of themselves, and they take care of themselves very nicely. Why? Now, that I can understand. I can understand if you don't have any morals or ethics, why you would do something like that. What I can't understand is why the voters put up with it. Not like they don't know. And every time I talk to them about it, they're just outraged. So do something.
Don't they become part of the political system? Like, I grew up in Hudson County.
Oh my God.
I was part of
You have
the
any,
machine.
you have any dead friends who vote there?
Yeah.
No.
And I did grow up, as part of the political machine. I got my political job. I know everybody who got their teaching jobs, superintendent, the whole run yards,
Right.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it is part of what you grow up with from way back, like I say, to hey.
Exactly.
So when you grow up and become an adult, that's the way it is. And if you want your favors, you go with it. I don't think you think corruption. Now, after reading the book, I wrote down I could see it in black and white, and I always knew it was there, but I never acknowledged it. I never acknowledged it as that, okay, I was part of that.
But now you do?
Now I do, and I want reform, but I've been wanting reform for the past 10 years, And that was my other question. Between the first book, the movie, and the new book coming out, I think that will clarify and bring a lot of attention to the reform, like it's a positive thing, I'm hoping.
Well, I hope you're right, and I appreciate you speaking up, because we so seldom in college classes get somebody who actually came up with that system. I had it happen at Rutgers once. There was this idiotic political science professor, full of themselves, as most of them are. And I mean you, not you. I like to think that person's watching. So this guy, I didn't particularly want to do this, but it was at the Eagleton Institute of whatever they call it thing, all political science people. But we went and we did it. And it was this obnoxious guy who says, you could just tell he was one of these kind of people pushing students around for a long time. We all have those kind of people. Nobody here like that. No. But we all have those people who just go, you all want to be in a situation like this. I'm sitting there, Sandy's sitting there, and this guy says, well, I haven't read your book, and I don't intend to. And I said, let me stop you right there. You haven't read the book, and you don't intend to, there's nothing that you can say matters to me. Next question. I waited ever since college to be able to do that with my book. Yeah. Now, I believe this young man, that good guy.
Who do you think was worse for the state, the mob or the corrupt politicians?
The mob,
Yeah.
who was worse?
Yeah.
That's good. That's a damn good question. And that may be the first time that one's ever been asked. Usually we get, the same questions after 4 years and 4 days. The corrupt politicians, because it just continues. You can have somebody good in law enforcement who, can really crack down, and the mob's been watered down so much now. It's almost a joke. The current generation is not like the old guys, because they had sort of rules they live by. The politicians, they're just scum of the earth. They're crooked bum. And spend money that we don't have, and they stick your grandkids with the bill, and so it's just going to continue on and on and on. If I had to put a gun to my head and make me choose one or the other, I'd go with the politicians being the worst. And the other thing about it is, the mobsters know they're crooks. They just know it. These politicians, they pretend to be public servants. You'll hear them talking, you know how much I had to give up to come and be a public servant? You know what? BS. There are some good ones. There are some good ones. You know what happens? I see a lot, and this gets back to what you were saying. I see somebody gets elected, they get down there, and they want to make a difference, and they want to be different, and they wind up becoming a part of the system. And then they're no better than the people that, they want to replace. That was a damn good question. I like that. Go ahead. You don't want to.
No, that's fine.
Fight over me.
Do you think that there's one person or I guess group of people that stand out as the most corrupt in all of New Jersey history? Or do you think that it's all kind of on the same level?
Like a top 10 list. Certainly Haig, the person who gave this lady her start in life, she can tell you all about him. This guy brought corruption to an all new level.
He was involved in law too.
Oh yeah. He was, there was a guy in Atlantic City that there's another HBO show that I've never seen because I don't have HBO still. What is it, Boardwalk Empire? Yeah. Anybody seen that? That's a good show. Anyway, what's that guy's name?
Nucky Thompson.
Yeah. I know the guy who wrote the book. He's a judge now. In fact, he's a judge in Ocean County, maybe? You have to ask him. I knew him when he was a lawyer. And Sandy and I had a problem, and we wanted to use a different lawyer than the one we normally use. And he's the one they found. And so one of the conversations, he said, I wrote a book. And I said, really? What's it called? And he said, it was about my great uncle, Johnny Young. I said, well, that sounds really interesting. And it turned out to be Boardwalk Empire. He's done quite well. And once again, Atlantic City shot itself with the old foot because they wanted to film it in Atlantic City. And they wouldn't let them, so they filmed it in New York. They get all the money. These people. Go figure. Yes?
Should people from New Jersey leave or stay to fight for better government?
I say you stay and fight. Too easy to run.
It's becoming too expensive to stay in place.
Well,
Hell yeah.
you're right about that. You're right. And the reason that it is so expensive is all this corruption. We have 568 municipalities, 600 school districts. Now, if you tried to get 600 school districts, you'd have to combine Pennsylvania, Delaware, I think Virginia, and a small foreign country. There's no need in the world for that, except all these people. It's back to machine politics, the teachers, you think there's not politics there? It's back to exactly what she was talking about. And that's what machine politics is about. It's about having jobs. It's not about doing service that needs being done. It's, and then you see what it leads to. Now, as long as you're making money, and traditionally Jersey's been a really good state. We got industry here, we had high tech here, we had pharmaceuticals here, agriculture here, although you see less of that nowadays, but we have everything going for us. But then when the economy tanks, look what happens. Can't afford this lifestyle anymore. And they can't afford to really, to roll back because they're in. So you have a ridiculous amount of money to go to New York City on what is, after all, stripped concrete. I've been all over the world. I've never been anywhere where there was, where the road was anything super fantastic like we think the Turnpike or the Parkway is. It's a road.
They don't even charge if you log off there.
No. If you're in California, we have this thing called the Santa Ana Freeway, or Interstate 5. You get on it at the Mexican border, you get off at the Canadian border. There's no tolls. I can even tell you the tolls are in California. There's the Golden Gate Bridge, $6. People are glad to pay because it's the Golden Gate Bridge. You're glad to pay to go across that bridge. Name a bridge that's like that in New Jersey. There isn't one. The other way, San Francisco, the Bay Bridge. Costs you to get across that. Oh, the bridge from, San Diego to Naguará. I forgot what the code is there, but, you know, it's nice, it's where the beach is, San Diego, basically, so you have to go across there, maybe go over there. But, you know, the rest of the time, you don't pay tolls. And even if you're gonna pay tolls, even if we can accept that you need to keep the road in good repair and all that, okay? You need this huge bureaucracy to run a road? It's a piece of concrete, for crying out loud. They built it in the fifties, and they said when the road is paid off, which was 1956, I think it was, supposed to be, they were gonna lift the tolls. That's 50 freaking years ago. And we still have these tolls, and they keep going up. Why do you people in New Jersey put up with this?
What are you gonna do, burn them down? I've been saying for years, it's outrageous.
It is outrageous. It is outrageous. And you know, and the only reason they keep that bureaucracy is because we have the state constitution of New Jersey, a clause that says you can't raise taxes without the people's consent, or we're just supposed to vote on it. How often, until just recently, when Christie came in and started changing, how often have you actually got to vote on something like that? You don't get to vote on anything like that. Why? Because you have these independent authorities that aren't part of this whole thing. That's the only reason we have them. Now, we got something like 300 of those things. There's the toll authority, New York, Jersey. You've got the DRPA going across to Delaware. You got this one, you got that one, and it's all about getting around the Constitution that says you can't raise money without the people's consent. It's about screwing people. Pure and simple.
I've done getting rich off of us.
All right, yeah.
I just want to ask one more question.
All right.
Like, I don't know if this is book related, but this is my thing. Like, I think the unions in New Jersey are the biggest downfall. I think that's the most corruption in New Jersey. Do you think that the union played any role in us going under economically?
Well, there are two different kinds of unions. There are what I like to call the real unions.
Like Teamsters?
The bricklayers, the carpenters, the cement masons, you know, those kind of people. Those people have to deal with real life economics. When the economy's in the toilet, we're not building new houses. So the carpenters and the roofers and those people, they understand all that's tied together. And they're going to have to make some changes all around. You've got the state employees. They don't produce anything. Carpenter build your house. State employee union people don't produce anything.
But not the resolve position, all those guys.
Well, yeah.
And then it's that pension.
Basically, yeah, basically
They
we
do
do.
contracts on
But
it.
the thing about it, and those people do valuable work too. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying that it doesn't go with the economy like the others, and so they have sort of an unreal attitude about it. One of the best people to speak to that is Senate President Steve Sweeney, who has been a lifelong member of the Iron Workers Union. He's the one who can really put it down for you. He's been a union guy, and he can't deal with the other thing. In the new book, by the way, we deal with unions. And some of the people who are heroes to the union movement actually have a problem with state government.
Well, I've been in a couple of unions, and I worked as a mason, and I don't think I deserved $60 an hour, and that's what I was getting. And then I worked for Waste Management, who was a union, and the union basically drove us out of business because they were up so high compared to competitors. Like, competitors for the same companies were making $13 an hour, we were making 27, so the union basically crashed our business.
There has to be some reality in it. I mean, all those are valuable jobs. We all need that. Union dollars. But there also has to be a dose of reality in there, and I think that's where it falls short. Some of these benefits where people get their health care paid for life and all that kind of, you don't find that anywhere else. But the people who don't have it are the ones who are paying for it for those who do. So
That's my problem.
that's a problem right there. I think that's changing because they have done studies that show without the change, the whole thing's going to collapse. And once you get to the end of the line and there is no money, it doesn't mean this what you're promised. Ain't no money, there ain't no money. And somehow they have it in their head that won't make a difference, that somebody will force somebody to do something. Baby boomers are starting to retire. And when the housing economy gets a little better and they can sell those houses, you think there's not gonna be a big exodus out of the state?
Huge.
Huge.
Well, they're charging us money to leave the state.
Well, yeah, thank you, Mr. McGreevy, for that. I mean, when he was desperate. The other thing McGreevy did that was really stupid is they put a tax on tires. If you ever bought a tire, you know they have a tax on it, in addition to the sales tax. Now, you go out, you buy a brand new car, it's got like 4 tires and probably some kind of spare. You're paying the tax on those tires, although you paid the tax on the entire car when you bought the entire car. That's how stupid this taxation is. Yes, sir, you're back there.
Yeah, I'm just curious if anyone like really surprised you when you found out that they were corrupt. There was any.
Did it surprise me?
Yeah, like in particular, anyone like you saw they were corrupt. And you're like, oh, thought this person's cool.
I think that probably I was surprised at the extent to which people sort of turned a blind eye to it. It was very obvious, and they've been up there for a long time, and they were going along, with the game and all like that. And I think that probably surprised me more. How long did it take me to figure out the place was corrupt? I came here from California, so, I don't know, 2-3 weeks? First, one thing I noticed was how really bad the government treats people in this state, and how they take it for a reason that I just can't explain. The other thing I noticed was how people go through red traffic signals frequently. I saw so much of that. In California, they'll stop half a block away. You're in a crosswalk. In New Jersey, I don't know how you account for that. California, if there's somebody coming down an on-ramp to get out of one of the notorious freeways that move at a great 20 miles an hour or something, they'll move over if they can and let you get on. Because California drivers are some of the best in the country. They're just, they have to be, I guess, because there's so much of it. If they had the attitude of Jersey drivers, my God, it would be mass slaughter. I mean, I just never, I don't know how to account for that. No other place I've ever lived have I seen that. And I don't know what that is. It's a cultural thing, I think. They're so rude. They'll get in the left lane and stay there forever. And in New Jersey, it's only for passing. They will not, if they see you trying to merge with traffic, they'll just go on like they're really nothing better than students,
Early on in the book, you talk about the corruption at UOB and J. Do you
Yes.
think it's putting the monitor in made it any better, or it is changing?
Well, it certainly putting in the monitor cost some people their jobs and cost some people some money. We deal with that in the new book as well, the follow-up to what's in this
Right.
book. I have to think that, it was improved. Was it improved as much as it needed to be? Probably not.
Reading that actually knocked down